Nourishing can also be comfort food. Like, there's a way to have mac and cheese, but also to have it be good for you. Everything is done through the lens of the faith, whether the topic is digestion, detox and drainage, sleep, blood sugar, any of it, it all comes through that.
Treat your soul like you're going to die tomorrow, but treat your body like you're going to live forever. That's what we're called to do.
We also have to remember that we're all mortal. I think there's a huge, unfortunate idealism, like idolizing in the holistic health space of let's be forever young, anti-age as much as possible. And that's just not reality. That's not the reality I want to live in, because I want to always have my death in mind. Ultimately, like, while it's good to be a good steward of our bodies, of our homes and our families, of our land, like, this is not the end.
All right, welcome back to Purposely Catholic. We have a special guest, special because this is our first woman on the podcast as a guest. We did have my wife step in once as a host for Khalil, but we do have on.
I was able to reclaim the chair.
Yeah.
She did a great job.
Gave it up.
She held it down. Katie held it down.
She gave it up. She did not want it. She's so busy, that's for sure. But we have with us Katie Gearns, who's a wife, a homeschooling mother, nutritional therapy practitioner living in St. Paul. Her great loves are the richness of the Catholic faith, family, culture, parish community, all things wellness. She has a new book out. We're going to talk all about it, which is Feast, Faith, and Flourish. She has a quarterly hard copy journal and called Ember CO. That's her website. So Katie, thank you so much. It's going to be easy to remember that it's my wife's name. So thank you for taking the time. Purposely Catholic.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So first off, obviously, our faith is genius the way that it's set up. I love how everything is according to the liturgical year. That's the design, how God had it, that there are fasts and feasts, like the title of your book says. And today before we prayed, St. Jerome, we have those different saints. The month of October is full of all these different things. So what got you into wanting to write a book or have this company that's based on liturgical living?
Yeah, so my background, I am a nutritional therapy practitioner. And so I kind of went that route after going through my own health experiences and just my desire to learn more about holistic wellness and health, and to help others as I was helped. And so me and one of my co-founders, Samantha, we met in 2020 as we did this program together, and just realized that we had like mutual loves for the Catholic faith, for liturgical living, seasonal living, and just seeing the parallels with our health, with creation, and wanting to kind of take a less conventional route after our program was over in getting this information out to people and really blending it with our faith, because there are so many parallels. And so this book was really a fruit of our magazine. And so the magazine we started in 2021, and it's seasonal, quarterly, 4 times a year. And its mission is holistic wellness in light of eternity. And so a big part of that is finding the harmony between, the spiritual and the physical, and how that all just works together, how God's design is just so perfect. And so this book is kind of, I would say, like a best of, or like a highlight of a lot of our content from over the years, but it's more for book format. So it's like a beautiful coffee table book. And it's written in with the seasons in mind. So it goes through, fall, winter, spring, summer. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want to ask, just so I'm just not aware, what is a nutritional therapy practitioner? You said?
Well, I can't like legally say holistic nutritionist, but that's like largely what it more so is. So
what is it? Oh, yeah.
Nutritional Therapy Association is a program, the certification program. And so you go through, and it's unique in that the way we look at health is through the lens of the foundations. And so there's these foundations in the human body, and everything else is kind of a consequence of these imbalance of foundations. And so that's kind of how we're trained to look at the body. So for instance, the foundations would be digestion, blood sugar regulation, fatty acids, minerals, hydration. And so we look at each of these areas, and because that's really at the base of our health. And so when something is out of balance at the foundation, then you have all these consequences with hormones, thyroid, heart, all these things are a consequence of a foundational imbalance. And so we can evaluate symptoms in the body by really taking it back to its root.
Well, so much of this conversation, from what I'm understanding and from just doing my own research, is that God designed our bodies in such a perfect way that we have to have those optimal conditions for our body to react and act as the way that it's supposed to, that God intended to get us back to, these environmental pollutions, these heavy metals, the pesticides, these plastics, all these things that we're inundated. And where I struggle is that it seems like everything is trying to kill us. And another day there's something else that I have to try to avoid, which is very tough. And I try to do my best. I got rid of all the plastics and, plastic spoons, and got all wood and glass, and using, stainless steel, frying pans, trying to get rid of the non-stick. Like, there's so many things that it seems like over years we've traded what we've used to do for all these years for cheaper and convenient so we can just throw things away. So is that a lot of like your holistic learning is trying to get back to the basics of, it's not as complicated as we make it, that we go back to the way that God intended? And what are some ways that you suggest for people to try to start with when they're inundated with so much information? What are some steps that people can take to get on this road to trying to get our body back to be that natural, like, homeostasis that's going to do all the work that God intended it to do?
Absolutely. There's a lot you said there, and I have to fully disclose that, like, I am someone who has gone down those like really complicated paths as well. Like I've added in, I've done the sauna therapy, the coffee enemas, the really intense programs, like things that to maybe a normal person are like really out of this world. And it's not like the first step by any means either. So I think like it can be appropriate to do maybe some more advanced things, but on the whole, and I've come back to this, and I frequently come back to this, is like the basics are most important because, one, they're sustainable. Two, it's more about like a way of life. Like how it meshes with how I'm raising my kids, the kind of lifestyle we want to have. And like in supporting them too. So when it comes to the basics, like I really, like sleep, circadian rhythm, I think are like two of the things that are probably the most foundational, and is so disrupted today, but somewhat simple to get back to. Of course, like we live in a time where we can be checking our email at 11 p.m. and working and on our phones. But if we can have the discipline and figure out a way to get rid of that blue light in the last hour or two before bed, to kind of make that just part of our daily rhythm as a family, and like embracing that good 8-ish hours sleep. It varies for people, what's optimal. And circadian rhythm, like waking up and letting my eyes hit, or letting sunlight hit my eyes. Ideally before like 8:30 in the morning, getting like 10, 15 minutes of direct sunlight. And that means actually going outside. Unfortunately, it's not the same thing through a window. And I live in Minnesota, so I'm not the model of perfection here. I don't prefer going outside when it's like negative 25 at 7 a.m. But yeah, those two things, circadian rhythm, getting outside a few times a day just to have that light, the natural light, and walking after meals. I mean, walking after meals is probably one of the best things we can do for our digestion. So simple things that you wouldn't think have such a big impact, but when we have sunlight first thing in the morning, when it's available, depending on your where you're living, that sets up your entire hormonal cascade for the whole day. It actually is like the most supportive thing for the following night's sleep. When we're disrupted in this, it just disrupts everything.
Yeah, for me, like a lot of people do go outside, but what do? The sun's bright, we put on sunglasses. And I know I have to actively think about that because I need them for work, for safety and stuff like that. But I'll take them off and like just kind of look up and try to, because it does signal to our skin, open up the pores and all those things. And that's what's great about podcasts and the internet, there is a slew of people who are focused on these things, like we're men, we like Andrew Huberman, so he loves talking about those kinds of things to get moving and get out into the sun, circadian rhythms, blue light, all those things. So we're seeing a lot of people start to get into that. But what sets you apart is that you're coming from a Catholic faith perspective. Most of these people are either agnostic, or with Andrew Huber, in his case, he's actually just started talking about the benefits of prayer, and he started to incorporate that into his life, which is exciting to see. So what are some ways that you ground this in scripture or what the church teaches, or some ways that you help people to try to bring this together? Because it doesn't need to be separate, like, hey, my health is over here and my soul is over here, because we know we're both body and soul. So what are some ways that you help, advise people, or your writings or through the book? What are some ways that you help combine those two?
First thing is that we are pretty strict in that for our magazine that we are in our 5th year, we've only had Catholic contributors. And, it's at times it's been a whole thing of trying to find professionals in these different areas to write expertly on topics while also doing so through a Catholic lens. And so I think you'd be hard pressed to find a single article in any of our journals in which, regardless of the topic, God is not mentioned. Something of the faith is not mentioned. And so it's always coming home to seeing it through this lens. And that's exactly how the book is as well. And, there's some big topics that we talk about, like regenerative agriculture. And that's one of my favorite parts of our book, honestly. It's written by this lovely woman in Virginia who lives in Alabama on her farm and has been practicing regenerative agriculture with her family, and just how the whole idea of the article is that we are the rulers, and we're kind of reclaiming our role as rulers of this land, and what that means, kind of big picture. So everything is done through the lens of the faith, whether the topic is digestion, detox and drainage, sleep, blood sugar, any of it, it all comes through that. But I also think what sets us apart is, earlier on when you mentioned you can get really caught up doing all these different things, we also have to remember that we're all mortal. And I think there's a huge unfortunate idealism, like idolizing in the holistic health space of let's be forever young, let's try and anti-age as much as possible. And we're looking for perfection, but that's just,
yeah.
and that's just not reality. That's not the reality I want to live in, because I want to always have my death in mind. Like, we have to remember that we are going to die, and that ultimately, like, while it's good to be a good steward of our bodies, of our homes and our families, of our land, like, this is not the end. And so there's also this piece about suffering that, like, yes, we all want to heal, but sometimes we suffer, and that's for a purpose. Like, it's not, we can't live this way of like, I just want to eliminate suffering, I just want to be better. Like, we can work towards healing actively while also surrendering that. And that is a huge part of what we try and bring forward.
That's great.
I was taking a look at your website. Beautiful website, by the way. So definitely
Thank
recommend that people check it out. I love that you highlight Saint Hildegard of Bingen, because I don't think she is talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
And she's one of the doctors of the church. One of my favorite quotes from her is, "All of creation is a song of praise." So it's like, even in the small things that we do, God can use that. Like, it could be used to glorify God. So through our sicknesses, our sufferings, but through our joys and our triumphs in this life, it all works to glorify God. It's all a note in this song that sings praise to God. I love that insight from her. How would you recommend? Because for a lot of people, we're not saying, all right, drop what you're doing and then go homeschool and start your own farm and grow your own crops. It's like wonderful if you could do any of that stuff. But where are some like practical ways that people can start living more holistically?
I'm sure the first thing that it just comes to my mind is just, making your meals at home from scratch. And what is a more accessible thing for all of us, and more affordable too. And we don't idolize like, oh, we're all living on farms and, walking barefoot all day and carrying my child on my back. Like we actually, as founders, we all live in a city. And I live in a small 1,300 square foot duplex at the moment, very little yard. My co-founder Samantha lives in Omaha, um, small house, and they use up every square inch of their yard so that she grows flowers and has this beautiful garden. And we're not telling you that anyone that they have to go live off the land and have that be their life, but in the simple things like making our own meals, shop, like being mindful of how we grocery shop, starting from scratch. Like I got into sourdough, and if you tolerate gluten, like that is a great kind of, I guess it's like a baby step to some people, and to some it took me like a year to like get up the courage to like actually do it. But yeah, so stuff like that, where it's like just starting from scratch in the kitchen, that is the best place to start healing, best place to nourish our family.
Yeah, I think that is that can probably solve like 80% of the problems that we have. We know that society is moved to this ultra processed foods, and we've traded in nutrition for convenience or taste. And we lack that, not everything has to be, the most savory tasting thing, or we traded in all the sweets. Like every meal everyone gets a dessert, and it's like, and it's the thing is like we got kids, so yes, I can make these decisions, but for me it's hard for this next generation, for my kids to try to do that, because all their friends are eating mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, and hot dogs, and sugar 24/7, and drinking pop. And it's like trying to balance, like not being a crazy person, like you're going to a friend's house, like give them their own food and things like that. So it's really tough, but trying to show them, like, not only how to do it, but why we do it. And as a family to do that together, like you said, like making things from scratch, turning it into an event where we got a garden, we make salads together, we try to eat, 90% of our food where we make it. And like you said, it is cheaper. So what are some ways that does your book address these kind of things, like recipes or how to meal prep or how to set people up? Because I think a lot of people think it's so complicated. And me, I've been meal prepping for a long time. I'm the only one in my job out of 30 guys that brings their own lunch. They eat out every single day. It's like crazy to me. And I bring multiple lunches, but it really, at the end, it doesn't take more time. It's like, yeah, you got to plan ahead. And I think that's where a lot of people fail, because they wait till they're hungry or wait till their body tells them I'm hungry, or I need more caffeine, or I want this sweet, versus planning it out. So what are some suggestions or some things in your book that may help some people, or some recipes of anything in that book that we can lean on?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of recipes over the years. Have so many, and they're kind of spread out. So we have a bunch in the book. You'll find a lot of liturgical recipes too, for like different feast days.
Cool.
And
Nice.
something that we try and really, really advocate for is like, nourishing doesn't have to be, like, oh, I have all my raw veggies here and I'm just going to like sprinkle a dash of olive oil and call it a day. Like, no, nourishing can also be comfort food. Like, there's a way to have mac and cheese, but also to have it be good for you.
I love that you said that. That's a great point, because that is a wonderful point. People tend to think I'm going to eat better, I'm going to eat healthy, so I can't have fun anymore with my food, but that's not the case.
No, I make mac and cheese for my kids like probably once a week, but you make it with quality noodles, with bone broth and raw milk and raw cheese, and I can add in a little bit of colostrum. Some people add in some like desiccated liver powder. My kids can sense that now, so I don't do it. But and then other things, like I can make homemade chicken nuggets. Just give me some pasture raised ground chicken meat and, use my organic flour, einkorn flour, whatever it is. And so it's not about restriction. And that's something huge, because a lot of, like, as founders, we came so much through holistic health. Like, I've been in this world for like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years. And it started out as like, oh, like to be healthy means to restrict it. You restrict your grains, your dairy, like things that I would still restrict, like seed oils. But by and large, it was very much restriction. And that harmed me greatly. It harmed so many women. And I see it time after time, people that come to me from either a vegan diet, a paleo diet. And while there can be benefits to these unique diets, long-term restriction can lead to a lot of depletion. It can lead to undernourishment and caloric deficits, especially as like a woman of childbearing age can't really afford to have. And so we want to focus on nourishment. And honestly, that's a lot of times when I work with clients. It's like step one is nourishment. We want to feed ourselves things that are good and wholesome and have calories. This isn't about just having a nice, lovely salad with different colors. Like there has to be good protein and good fat. And that's what helps to make taste good too. And so nourishment is not about restriction. And that is a big thing. So when we're making meals for ourselves or for our families, meal prepping, we can still make those things we love, but how can we do that in a way that's nourishing?
As you're talking, the quote from Jeremiah is coming to mind, like, "I know the plans I have for you," says the Lord. God designed us and he has a plan for us. And that extends to, because he is a loving creator and father, that extends to the way we treat ourselves. So living holistically, and it's not restrictive. You're right. To live holistically, to live healthy, it's just to live according to the plans of the Lord. I love that you guys are bringing back into this space this balance between the material and the physical that we see, and the immaterial and sacred, because the two need to be working together. And so, just like in the spiritual life, we have to reclaim the sacred and be intentional, form habits. If you want to be a person of prayer, then do you make time to pray? If you want to be a student of scripture, do you make time to get into scripture? And likewise, do you take time to think about what I'm going to eat this week, what I'm going to give to my family this week, the type of products I'm going to bring into my home? And it's like setting up those rituals is simple in one sense, but forming the habit, it's going to take a little effort because you're doing something completely new and something different. But you can see the sacred in that, like to care for your home, to care for this temple, to care for what God has entrusted us with. Like it's a beautiful thing. Like it's something that we have to give thought to.
Yeah, we have one of our products that we launched a couple of years ago now, a few years ago, is this home wellness guide called Veriditas. And Veriditas is from St. Hildegard. It's kind of a hard word to translate, but it's about like newness and greenness and like breath of the spirit, breath of life. And um so our guide is about nourishing your home in your home and with your family. And it kind of goes through all of the health foundations that we as nutritional therapy practitioners talk about, but also integrating so much of the faith, diving deeper into a lot of areas, whether it's like thyroid health or mineral and vitamin nutrient profiles. And but one area specifically we have is the spirituality of meal planning. So kind of what you're talking about. And something that we put in there, because meal planning is not as simple for everyone as, some people take to it really easily. It can be a personality thing, but there's something about spirituality meal planning of like, it's a discipline. Like I'm going to follow through with this plan. And we have suggested in the past, like a good Lenten practice is like, okay, like for my family, I am going to vow to cook, soups on Wednesdays and Fridays. And like when it comes to Wednesday, I might not want soup, but like this is part of our meal planning, part of our commitment and something that we're offering up. And so even just adhering to a meal plan can become a spiritual practice because sometimes it goes against what we want and it's going against our desires. Our kids might put up a fuss, but
So yeah, well, the kids always put up a fuss as far as I don't like this and this one doesn't like that. It's a battle for sure.
Or even as the mom where, it's 4:30 and I'm like, oh my goodness, do I really want to like start this meal that I was planning to make that I probably should have started 2 hours ago? And it's easy to be like, oh, okay, what do I have in the freezer? But being able to stick to something is like a really great practice that we can make a spiritual offering.
I feel bad for my wife sometimes, to be like she does during Lent. She doesn't like to eat out at all, and so we cook at home. I mean, we cook home throughout the year, but like during Lent, that's a specific thing that we try to do. But I feel bad. Like sometimes we're in those days where kids are doing a bunch of things, we're doing a bunch of things, and then all of a sudden it's dinner time already. We want to eat. I know she's tired. She's been through a lot. She's thinking about what she's going to put together for us, and she wants it to be good. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go to Chipotle because it's healthy. You know, it's so much easier. But being intentional, it is a discipline, and that's the thing. Sometimes we slip and we stumble, but developing that habit of saying, you know what, I'm gonna take a look at my week. I'm gonna sit down with my husband. I'm gonna sit down with my wife, and we're gonna take a look at our week, and we're gonna just maybe just sketch out a few points like this day we're gonna do this day we're gonna do this. Try our best to stick to it. Support each other in it. Like in that, you start developing a little ritual as a couple, and then you're forming your kids in that too. They might complain, but they're seeing how intentional mom and dad are, and they learn from it.
Yeah.
Mm.
What has worked for us, we've been doing it, like I said, for years, is that we basically do a lot of the same things over and over again. We find out what the kids do like, and we have a Monday through Friday thing on the refrigerator. Like Mondays, like today is pesto chicken. Yesterday was chili. Then, we're going to do vegetable beef soup with beef on the side. Like, so we have this. So the kids know, like, they don't have to ask for dinner. They know what's for dinner. And one will gripe like, oh, veggie soup again. And the other one will be like, all right. But then we'll invite them into that process. Okay, well, what do you want this week? Let's let you pick one of the meals so that you're not so much pushback. So they feel like they're kind of getting their way, but you can't just avoid vegetables because you don't like them. You know what I'm saying? So everything has to be that, but trying to involve the family in that, it really does help. But like I said, again, it is hard to do that. But at the end, it's really less time knowing, like, how many times have you, like, I'm hungry. All right, now you got to go get in the car. You got to go find the food. You got to wait in line. You got to come back versus like, yeah, you have these things already kind of set up, and it takes a little bit on, Sunday night we'll make Monday, Tuesday into Wednesday. And then Wednesday night I'll make food, for Thursday, Friday, and then usually Saturday. And then Sunday is totally different because we're trying to live liturgically. Sunday is more of a feast day. And I wanted to get to that. That was in the title of your book, to feast. And that's the beauty of our faith, is that we have these rhythms, like you talked about, of fasting and feasting. But if we don't feast and we don't fast, then there is no contrast. If we're just, as Americans, we just feast every single day. But those Wednesdays and Friday practices, or Lent, or that voluntary asceticism where we deny ourselves, not because we're, want to just be mean to ourselves, but we want to obviously be the master of our bodies, that our whims aren't going to tell us what to do, but also to appreciate it. And this is the way that God set it up, this fasting and feasting. What are some ways that you suggest? I know my wife, she's been doing 20-hour fast for like 5 years. She does one meal a day. That's her go-to. I know that's not for everybody, but for her that does, like on Sunday, then she opens her window earlier and she really likes it. What are some ways that you suggest with people to try to bring that in liturgically, to have and embrace that fasting and feasting that the church in her genius has set up for us?
So we've talked about fasting a lot early on in our journals, and it's obviously unique to everyone, like bio individuality. Like fasting does not work for everyone. I think a lot of women have a hard time with it. It has to be done right, to be done well, and to be effective and helpful. But like when it comes to fasting, I like to not so much think about it physically as I do spiritually, because I think when we start to attach the physical benefits to fasting and that's our focus, we can easily like lose a sense of like why we do it spiritually. And so, when we think about Lent and fasting, like, is our goal to lose weight? Is our goal even something really great like balancing blood sugar? Like, what's our focus has to be on the Lord. And when we fast, like, it is, we're depriving ourselves of something that we need as a necessity as a human being. Like, that's the reason why food is like the most frequently thing we would fast from as Catholics. That we're called to fast from food on certain occasions, and that's because like food is what we need to survive. It's not like it's all good and well to say we're fasting from social media, which, like, great, those things are good to fast from. But the thing about food is that's actually like depriving us of something we need as human beings to live. And So I like to keep that in mind of like, okay, this is a deprivation because the Lord asked us to do it. And that requires us to rely a lot more on him. Um, so yeah, I mean, the physical benefits are just so different per person that I think it's better to focus on like, what is this calling of us spiritually?
Yeah. I just think that people should experience it a little bit, because just let's just admit that majority of Americans don't. Like, like today I heard somebody say, I'm starving. I'm like, you ate breakfast like 3 hours ago. What do you mean you're starving? Like, we have a disconnect on what is actually it is. It's like, we're not saying that don't eat all day, but like skip a meal once in a while, offer that up, to unite that. It shouldn't obviously be the focus of, dieting, but to have those spiritual connections. But we should also, show our body, that we're in charge, because it's really easy to be a slave to our stomachs, any of our passions. And it's good to test that, in the spiritual realm, but it also takes physical restraint, obviously, and there's, such a balance. I always quote St. Augustine. It says, treat your soul like you're going to die tomorrow, but treat your body like you're going to live forever. That's what we're called to do, because we need it. We need it. We don't have to punish it crazy, but we're going to need it for the long haul. We got to be better stewards. St. Paul says, we're the temple of the Holy Spirit. It's like, well, how are we treating our temples? Are we being good stewards of that? And I just love the feast aspect. Like on Sundays, I eat pretty healthy during, 6 days. And on Sundays, like, I work hard. And on Sundays, I eat well and I rest hard. Sometimes to chagrin of my wife, where I got my feet up on the sofa a little too much, and she still can't help herself, and she's busy about it. I'm like, I did 6 days. I'm like, man, I'm tapped. And once in a while, I will order pizza or do things like that, from time to time. But I think there's a beauty to that rhythm, and that's why I keep getting back to that word. Is that God has designed our lives in a rhythm, and I think, especially with women, you could speak to the rhythm of your cycle. And I know, like my wife and a lot of women who I've heard from the show have a hard time of how to balance, to be able to do these things and living a busy life, who still have to go work a 9 to 5, who still got to come home, help do the kids stuff and make these meals. What are some ways that you're helping women to try to not get burnt out, to try to balance it? My wife, she's a principal, and she still feels like she's got to be 100% to everybody all the time. And she goes on those, cusp of burnout all the time, because it's so much is demanded. And she feels like she can't give 100% to one thing. It's like she's being pulled in so many directions. I'm sure you deal with this. This isn't something unique to her. This is a modern phenomena of more women are working and still have the domestic responsibilities, because the men, let's just be honest, don't step up as much as they should. Not to say that about me or Khalil. We're obviously saints, right? But so what are some ways that you help counsel and help women to try to either put boundaries in to so they don't burn out, because we do need that rhythm and we need their sanity, obviously.
Yeah, well, something you're talking about in the mineral to balancing world is called sympathetic dominance. And I kid you not, I think it's showed up on about 99% of all the hair tissue mineral analysis tests that I've done on women over the past 3 or 4 years. And it's a pattern that shows just basically burnout. And it's specifically with our potassium level, which in the mineral world, potassium correlates to cortisol. And so what this is showing is that at one point we were probably riding high, like running on cortisol, and then eventually our body just stops because we've run out. And so now we're in this sympathetic dominant state, and that is so many women. And so how do we work to get out of that? Unfortunately, there's no simple answer, because we have just been conditioned, since childhood. I know like so many of us, I mean, myself, you go to school, you're doing like 3 different sports, and you're working a part-time job, then you go to college, which doesn't really, I mean, some people live kind of a different college life out there. And then you're working full time, and you might get married, start having kids. I mean, all this compounds to the point where your body is just kind of like, I don't have much left to give. Like I'm physically running, I'm physically moving forward, but I am also just burnt out. And like a really good example of this is like a lot of women, and I know it was the case for myself too. It's like you are go, 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 and you will just keep going, because if you were to stop, you would just realize how tired you are. And it's like the reason I would never nap is because I knew that if I were to lay down, I wouldn't be able to get up. And that is just the reality that so many women experience. And so that's why we're conditioned, our body is so used to going that we can't stop. And so a big part of healing is learning to stop. And to take little moments, because it's not going to happen overnight and our lives are still busy. But, a lot of times with women, it's like, okay, what are those moments in your day that even though things are still moving forward and progressing, like you can actually spend time to be present in that moment. And I had like one woman who I was working with, and she came back to me after a couple months of like really trying to troubleshoot this and working on her health. And she was like, what I discovered is that when my kids are playing outside in the backyard, whether it's like after dinner time or whatever the time of day it was specific for her, it's like, she was like, I used to just busybody around the house doing XYZ. She's like, you know what? Now I just sit on the grass and I watch them. And it's 30 minutes that she might do that for. But that practice alone starts to rewire the brain, starts to make these changes of like, I can sit down. Because a lot of times, like, yes, we're busy, but are we really that busy that we can't take a break? Or is it just that we don't know how? And so I think a big part of it is finding those moments in your day that we can leave the phones away, to be present in the moment, sit down, whether it's like, or go for a walk, but finding ways that we can learn and train ourselves to be present, because that is like probably the most basic thing we can do for our healing when it comes to this burnout.
And get closer to God. And get closer to God is the practice in the presence is that we can't have time for him either.
Of course.
Yeah, and it's not like, all right, just eat a banana, get your potassium back up, and let's keep going, keep pushing through. One thing my wife said to me, she, on some level, almost like feels guilty to take a break or to ask for help with the kids, or she doesn't want to disrupt. Like, she knows I'm working, Bobby and I both, we're doing 100 different things between this podcast and our work and our ministries and what have you. And so she wants to support me in that, which I love, like I deeply appreciate. But at the same time, I want her to be healthy. I want her to be sane, right? The word that Bobby used, like you want them to show up just full of life and joy and energy. And I know we go through different seasons. Right now, I've got 3 kids under 6. And so it's like that they demand a lot of our time. But could you speak into that a little bit? Like, it is important for moms and women just to pause and not feel a sense of guilt as though this period of rest were an indulgence.
Or there's something else they should be doing. They're wasting it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still, I mean, I feel that sometimes too. But I think it's important, especially if you're a wife or, or a mother, talking to your spouse, about how to make this reality. Like years ago, I had read, A Mother's Rule of Life. And my son, when I first read it, my son was like 3 months old. And I was like, oh, this is so unrealistic. And I like tossed it out. I was like, actually like kind of angry at the book. But as time has gone on, I just like recognized more and more, like, obviously that woman's framework is not going to work for every family, but the idea of really making this rule of life so that we can get our priorities in the right order, God, myself, my spouse, my children, my work. And for me, for instance, like my husband is very, very good about like putting the kids to bed, allowing me to have that time. I mean, like right now I have like a nursing 4-month-old. So like not him, he's still with me, but when he's asleep, like a way that I love to really ground myself and a way that it keeps me away from my phone. And, so I do the sauna. I have a near infrared sauna, and, I'm in that space, and like we have a small space. So I literally have like a teepee and my near infrared light panel, but I sit in there and it's a great time to pray a rosary, like do not bring in any electronics. And what I love about the sauna is that it's a way to put ourselves into a parasympathetic state without a sympathetic activity, like running or like something that actually drains us. So it's one of the few activities where we're sweating, we're like rejuvenating the body, but it's done in a parasympathetic way. So it's helping us to de-stress actively. And so that's one way that I do it.
It's awesome. The saunas, I don't do it as much at the gym as I want to, but when I was doing it 3 times a week, like 25 minutes, like I just felt great because like you said,
Yeah.
it's a passive way. And it is for me, it became like a chapel in there because there's something to it, especially like those last 5 minutes, like when it starts to get really hot. It's like, that's a lot of times where I would get those insights. Like it's like going to adoration. It's like you're there hour in the last 5 minutes, like God is really finally, your mind finally got to calm down. And I think it really does help you, like, balance your mind and your body. Like we have to do like the rosary where we're tricking our bodies at one point and our minds are running this way. And for me, that's great advice. I think the sauna is great.
I've been in the market for one. So this is like encouraging me to actually, you got those like pop-up ones?
Yeah. I know
You
a bunch
will
of
know
people
I have like an actual like teepee I got off Etsy. Like it's like a tent.
Okay.
Like almost like my kids thought it was for them at first. And I was like, no, this is mine. And then I just have like a 4-light near infrared panel. And it's from Sauna Comfort, which is just over here in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. I got to look that up.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys that have them. I know like people who buy them for their house, the actual saunas, they never end up using them. They spend all the money. Like me,
I walk by it every time I go into Costco. They've got one for sale.
Yeah, I would love to, but it's like by the time they warm up and those they take forever. But
what's something, Katie, that you're hearing from like your clients or from your the people that engage you on the Ember Collective? What are some of those common things that you're hearing women just bring up time and time again, or some of those questions that you might be presented with?
For us, I think it's a few things. So one is how to really pursue holistic health in a sustainable way, because so much of what's out there on social media with influencers, it's like everyone's trying to always one up each other of like, well, you do like sauna therapy like 3 times a week. Well, I do it 5 times a week. And, or, like, oh, you eat organic this. Well, I do that, and, oh, you only do sourdough with organic flour. I have freshly milled grains. And so it's just like, we have to be intentional about like simplicity. And, for most people don't have the means, or the time or the space to be doing all these things. And so like we've talked about earlier, like what are the important things? What is going to have like the biggest impact for our health and our family? And a lot of times it's like, what is going to support my fertility so that I can keep being a mother, throughout all these years? And that is a big thing too, because most of the women, I would say, tend to be in that like 23 to 40 age range for us. And I say we actually have a very wide age range, but that is kind of where the core is. And then also how to not, I think people want a voice that understands the difference between what is appropriate as a Catholic and what is not. Because again, that's another thing where in the realm of holistic wellness, people, you see them move further away from God and more towards something else. And it becomes very blurry for a lot of people because you're following someone on Instagram who you've seen for years who is, I hate to do air quotes, but like a Christian. But that term is used very broadly in social media, like in a lot of these accounts. But then over time, it goes from just like nourishing recipes and a good movement routine to things that might be questionable as Catholics. And so for us, we get a lot of questions about, like what is good, what is right, what is morally wrong, how to how to drown out that noise of what is not okay as a Catholic. And so I'd say that's also kind of a big space for us too, is being a voice that is trustworthy in that area. We don't take that lightly.
How much in this, you mentioned fertility, and we have this beautiful teaching from St. John Paul II on theology of the body, where we have this natural family planning that many Catholics don't know anything about it. And we have so many women like in this age range, which you're talking about, who are having a very hard time to conceive. Obviously, environmental factors, diet, stress, all the other, being on birth control for, since they're 15 because they had cramps or things like that. So it's like, I'm sure, and that has to be one of the biggest wounds within women that are walking around with, those who want to conceive, who can't, those who are struggling in that. How have you guys addressed that in the book, as far as like, obviously that rhythm of the cycle and the natural family planning, and how to bring God into the middle of that, especially involving men like us? Like, I went to the class, and I actually went to natural family planning, and it was weird at first, but we've been practicing since we got married, and it does help lead to intimacy. But the guy can't just be like, whoa, okay, no, that's your cycle, you handle that, and let me know, kind of one of those things. Is like trying to be involved in the process, because obviously there's times when
listen, I'm one of those guys where it's like, listen, that's why I'm laughing. We did the natural family planning as a couple, right? As part of our pre-marriage prep. All the signs and symbols, and there's so many different techniques. And so I think this is what I want to say to my brothers who would listen to this, or even like if you're married, a good way to approach your husband. For us, it leads to good conversation. And in that we find intimacy, and it's grounded in a spirituality of like, no, it's good for us to abstain at times, right? That's St. Paul's reminder to us. And yeah, so I don't get into the book, like there's a workbook, and you don't
do the temperature.
I don't
and
get into that area. I know
and
different
all
couples,
the
and this, I'm not,
stuff.
this isn't a knock. I know different couples differently, where like the guy writes in the book, and like, no, she writes in the book.
For that. We got an app. We share an app.
Yeah, she writes in the book. She has the app, but like we talk about things, and then we're very intentional about how we do things, and like we make decisions as a couple when it comes to that space, so it could still be sacred, and it's a beautiful thing. So I don't know where you were going with that.
Well,
Bobby,
I was asking
a
question about if they touch that in their magazine or in the book, because I just think a lot of people just don't know that, this is like the secret that, we do have people like Christopher West and Jason Everett who are starting to really get out there and talk about the beauty of our bodies, that this isn't, puritanical, like, no, you can't have sex. Like, no, we're meant to be fruitful and to multiply. And those chemicals and the artificial birth control and those things, we're starting to see really the statistics coming out of how dangerous they are. And not only just to later be able to conceive, the cancer, a lot of those other kind of things, but the beauty and the genius of Catholicism, that we have a saint who was a pope who preached on this for 50 something weeks every Wednesday, to try to open up the connection between Genesis and the most intimate thing that we can do with our spouses, in the same way that Jesus talked about, he's the bridegroom and the church is the bride, that's something to be embraced, that's how close he wants us, not only to be with him, but to be with our spouses. So do you speak on that? If not in the book, or there's if people have information that they want to gain to learn a little bit more about that, where you can guide them to?
Absolutely. We do talk about fertility a fair bit. We don't have as much content on NFP, because I will say, as a woman, I feel like I see that content everywhere. And so we bring in more of the biology aspect of it and the rhythm of the female body. But syncing those rhythms, not just, it's like looking at rhythms overall. So we have our circadian rhythm, our infradian rhythm, our menstrual cycle, our, the seasons. There's all these different rhythms and seasons that we live with, and how do they work together? And, like we've had a 4-part series on cycle syncing, which is kind of a big topic with women these days. And we've talked about infertility,
cycle syncing.
Cycle syncing is lining up.
We're really losing the guys real quick.
I'm sorry.
We're expanding our audience. No, thank you for educating us, because
I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious. I was a pre-med major, so this is like, okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wouldn't expect like a lot of like normie doctors to really know about this or talk about it. And but cycle syncing is looking at a woman's menstrual cycle, and there are 4 different parts to it. So there's menses, there's ovulation, the follicular phase, luteal phase, and each of these phases really calls for something different in terms of how we care for ourselves, which sounds really confusing at first. But if we learn it well enough, then it can become a part of our life, where it's like, okay, our luteal phase demands more carbs as our body is producing this progesterone. There's certain parts of our cycle where we could really up our movement and exercise, and other parts of cycle where it's really just like some gentle stretching and all these things. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but the way we live throughout our cycle can really impact the health of it. And then also just like as a woman, my mood is changing throughout my cycle. Like I am more open to certain things. I'm more creative during certain parts of cycle. So a lot of people have taken this into like, I'm going to live my life around this kind of. And so like, if I own a business, I will focus, during follicular phase and ovulation on really like getting creative and reaching out and networking. And then it's going to be more introverted at other parts of the cycle. So that is what a very bird's eye view of cycle thinking.
That's amazing. So where can someone go to?
So someone who is a good friend of mine, her name is Bridget, and she runs Managing Your Fertility. And it's really a one-stop shop for all different kinds of NFP methods, fertility information. I mean, her website's a phenomenal resource. So managingyourfertility.com would be the place that I would go to start to get information on all that stuff. And then she kind of has a large network of women in this field from there.
That's a shout out to Bridget.
Perfect.
Check that out.
Well, thank you so much. We don't want to keep you here. We're like nerding out. Like I
listen, before we wrap this up, I don't know how you're doing on I could talk to you all evening here. The homeschooling thing. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
My wife and I have been going back and forth. Close your ears, Bobby. Yes. His wife's the principal of our school.
Yep.
But my wife and I, we've been going back and forth on homeschooling. So how did that start for your family? Maybe just to take that as the first question.
Yeah. I mean, me and my husband both were normal public school. Like I went to a Catholic high school out in Philly, like all girls, but it was never on my mind of homeschooling until we got married. And then I don't know, it just like I think it's a lot of factors of just the way we approach our life in our family, and homeschooling then was just kind of like always going to be what we did. And I'd say I'm a little bit more like, I'm very passionate about it, but I'm also not your typical homeschooler of like, we have all these curriculums. We're kind of more unschooly. And it's like, all right, look at this child and how he's learning to read, even though I like haven't done much. And it's just really cool seeing the child develop that way and have, like I run a business, and so they're like involved with me. We kind of go about our day together. But for us, it's really, we always wanted our family to be rooted in the home. And both of our works are kind of like more flexible and a lot done at home. And that's just kind of how we wanted to live our life. So I think that's really just for us, the direction we went.
The thing that scares me with homeschooling, I grew up similar to most people who are homeschooling, and I'm starting to, like, the Lord's bringing a lot of them into my life, and into my wife's life. It's like, there's this fear of the unknown. Like, is this the right thing to do for my child? Am I going to set them up for the future properly if we do end up doing this? Was that a fear that you guys had?
Again, I think I'm kind of weird in this regard. I think it's like, it takes a lot of effort though, not to compare, because like every year you can reevaluate and look at all the families around you and all the different things they're doing. And, I have a lot of friends who send their kids to Catholic school. And like, it works really well for them. And sometimes I'm like, oh man, that was like super nice to like have some time during the day to work on my business without my kids. but at the same time, and then same with the homeschooling, because everyone homeschools differently. And like, we do not homeschool very similarly to a lot of families around us, but they all do it their own way too. And so at the end of the year, you can be like, oh man, like, should I have done this? Should we change course? And that is just the reality of homeschooling, is that every year it's reevaluating. And for some of us, it's like every few months. And it's just accepting that it's an ongoing process, and what is right for one child this year might not be right for another, the same child the next year. I don't know. It's just, that's what everyone tells me.
I've been on the not that I wanted to homeschool, but the way that education is moving so fastly, I was sending Khalil articles about, have you heard of the Alpha School in Texas? Starting up with the whole principle behind it is 2-hour schooling. And that's the advantage of homeschoolers having, is that they figured out that you don't need to spend 6 hours drilling, the way that the educational system's set up from Prussia to be good workers and to sit in rows and to sit still, especially for boys. But this getting to this model as AI increases, where we can learn for 2 hours, and where the freedom that homeschoolers have is then to spend the rest of that time working on a business, your passion projects, to do different other things, life skills, how to change a tire, not being restrained for those kinds of things. And at the same time, there's other networks where you can homeschool. But I think AI is what's going to help, is that not all the pressure is on you. Like, they're not a teacher. You basically have like a dashboard where once you master third grade math, then you move on to the next thing. And if you don't, there's a video to help you try to get to that. I know screens can kind of be balanced, but the goal is to do like 2 hours a day, to where you free them up to learn financial literacy, to learn about holistic living, to learn about the faith in a real way, with field trips and being outside. So I think that's the exciting part about it. And I think there is going to be a revolution within the next 5 years with AI that's going to open it up, is more if the schools go woke and all the craziness that goes on, where people have that option. Because I mean, I don't know how many people I talk to is like, I wish I would have learned how to trade stocks, or how to change a tire, or how to do anything other than what they taught us in high school. That was like memorizing dates and, taking classes just to take a test. So I think AI is going to change it faster than we know what's going to happen. It's going to open it up, but it should be to take back our time. So where we have these life experiences, especially around our faith, like taking pilgrimages to the little shrine sites, or being able to go to daily mass, or saying the road, like those things. But then also being out in like what we're meant to be out in nature, to learn how to garden, learn how to do, honey, with bees, or whatever that may be. Or maybe that's sports. Maybe that's whatever that is, that we have that freedom to try to take back our time. And this is a new trend that's going on right now. It's just for the rich. It's like $40,000, $50,000 a year. But these kids are doing 2 hours a day in school. They're 2 grades ahead of everybody else. The average high schooler in the SAT is 1540. So it's working. So it's starting to come out, but right now it's just for the rich. But you heard it here first. Look up, I forgot what the lady's name is. It's Alpha School, but on Instagram, her name is Mackenzie. It's called The Future of Education. And it's exciting, because this could be a tool for homeschoolers too. This doesn't, where you can facilitate it, where you have the best of the best, and that the lessons are crafted on what you're interested in. So if you're interested in farming, then the math lessons will be around acreages and crop yields and things like that. If you're into making dresses, it'll be into inches and tape measures. So they also make it to where you're interested in it. So it sounds exciting. It's not, ChatGPT, which 90% is used for tweeting. This is where you actually have like a Socratic a dialogue back and forth with this dashboard to help get you to that next level. So I think that's what the future is, Khalil. So hold on, watch the rest of that full video I sent you, and you'll get excited like I am, because I'm like, where was that?
Well, I'm excited because I really find like a kindred spirit in what you guys are doing at the Ember Collective. Because if we want to live holistically, we want to live according to God's designs. I'm just having a hard time sending my kid to school for 8 hours a day, when, I mean, that's 40 hours a week. And that doesn't count the homework that they get afterwards. That doesn't count the extracurriculars. It doesn't count the sports. So most of their formation and the people that they're surrounded by are not mom and dad. Like we ought to be the ones that are forming them in such a critical part of their lives. And so the current model that we have, and that's the problem. I love our school. Like, we have an awesome Catholic school. Uh, it's not just because Bobby's here or Katie might watch this. Like, we have an awesome principal, and our teachers are ridiculously good. Like, there's no complaints. But still, there's just something about, I'm going to send my kids away for 8-10 hours total in a day. So I get them at the latter part of the day when they're at their worst, and I'm expecting them to be attentive and retentive and to listen. And then weekend rolls around, we're going to gymnastics and we're doing sports and we're doing all these other things. It just seems off.
And then add homework into the mix. I mean, come on. Do we ask full-time employees to take homework and to do it in the evenings?
Well, that's the good news. That school, there's zero homework. Zero. So
Yeah.
but that's what you're getting at. It's taking your time back. So how do we take our
Exactly.
time back to open us up to do whatever God's purpose is, not to be, a cog in a wheel, to be working an assembly line and the whole idea, there has to be radical changing as far as
I've heard Matt Walsh talk about it because they homeschool as well. And he talks about, I've heard others as well, but he was the one that first kind of turned me on to it from a guy's perspective. You don't need to send your kids away for 8 hours when most of it is just classroom management and trying to shuffle them from one thing to the next. And so to do it and to do it well, you have to be willing to parent your kids. You can no longer send them off for, like you said, it'd be nice to have 8 hours of babysitting so I can work on my business and do what I want to do. I had these kids. I probably should be the one raising these kids.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's an opportunity. I mean, and what you're saying too, Bobby, is like if we can condense things to like those 2 hours a day, it's like you have to see the rest of it as an opportunity and not just like free time. It's an opportunity to like live well, to fill our days well. And that's like with us with more unschooling, it's not like a lack of formation or education. It's being invested in each child and their needs and desires, and following that. And so seeing it all as an opportunity.
Mhm.
And that's a big part of this whole philosophy is motivation. Like, well, what's motivating them? Because every kid's going to be so different. That's what's exciting to me. Is like, well, my son is way different than my daughter, but they get the same education basically. But that you still got to get the basics. You just like everything, it goes down to the ground level. So you still got to know, reading, math and those things. But this new generation, it's changing so fast where you got to learn how to collaborate. You got to learn how to be creative. You got to learn how to communicate, especially in this world. So like it's moving so fastly and the education system isn't moving fast enough because this is the way that we always did it. The kids are going to go do what I did because I sat in school for eight hours and I got good grades and I got a job. So therefore it's great versus looking at what is changing and looking at the tools and, mostly though, it's to me motivation. Like there's things that motivate different kids. Like, well, how can we get them to get the same education in 8 hours and 2 hours? Well, okay, you're going to get this time. Well, not to scroll and go on Roblox, but maybe, they do play club or they play a sport. Well, okay, that time they can weight train. They can do something that they're working by having that built-in motivation. These kids in this, the second graders started a food truck. The fifth graders took a sailboat to like to the Bahamas and back. Like it's like some serious stuff. So it's like we set the standards too low. We have to higher the standards, but have where we have people who are less teachers and more coaches and mentors to try to help them to pursue whatever it is that God's putting in them to, like say Catherine Sienna says, be who God meant you to be and set the world on fire instead of saying, well, you just got to do what I did and I don't care about it, because that's what I did versus like setting them free, setting the standards higher, which is, eternity, obviously, but, making, kids that are full of joy, who love to learn and creating these lifelong learners. So I'm excited about the future. I think it's 5 years away, but we're going to see some big changes if people are brave and bold enough to take the risk. But we're keeping you crazy, and I got to actually get moving. I'm on to the next thing. I have volleyball and cross country pickup and all these other things.
Katie, if you're ever in Northwest Indiana, you got to let us know. We're going to have a sourdough party. We'll get our families together. It's
awesome.
going to be great.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you.
Where can people find out more about you? We'll put it obviously in the show descriptions, but if you want to just give your socials, the book, where they can buy the book, and your website.
Yep. So our website is www.theember.co. And then our Instagram handle is theember.co. And our book, Feast, Faith, Flourish, is available through Sophia Institute, shipping now. You can also get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Yeah, that's us. Subscribe to our magazine because the book is just, a snapshot of all the great content. We're still going.
You guys have to check out their website too. I mean, the stuff you make is just beautiful. And that's what I love about it the most, having not yet held a physical copy. It's just, our faith is beautiful and you've captured that really nice, really well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for enlightening two meathead of men that want to get a better understanding about, your space. And I think it's important that we have these dialogues. We do appreciate you taking the time. If you found this conversation useful, make sure you hit that like, share, subscribe button. We're trying to get the light of Christ and hit all different topics from masculinity to women's issues to interviewing people on all different kinds of topics. So we are not pigeonholed into one thing. So we're ready to have these conversations. So if you're enjoying them, make sure you subscribe so every week it pops up for us. God bless you and thank you so much.